Chapter 11. Now that things have come to this, let's eat first. Bai Luan snapped out of his thoughts in the little black room. In reality, his hand was still touching that instrument. This instrument is called an internal structure scanner. You place the item you want to analyze beneath it, activate the instrument to scan. Then you can learn its internal structure. There are size limitations. The scanned item cannot exceed a computer host. Despite this limitation, it doesn't diminish the fact that it's incredibly powerful. Bai Luan opened the cabinet beneath the experimental bench. He looked at the accompanying projection equipment stored there for who knows how long. Once the scan is complete, you can project the structural blueprint using this equipment. It can be freely zoomed in and out. Every detail, no matter how small, of the scanned object can be replicated. This thing is truly incredible. With this, after capturing an enemy weapon, you can scan it immediately. You get the weapon's blueprint right away. Simple weapons could be directly replicated. Regardless of whether you understand the principles, you can build it according to the blueprint. Not to mention, if your own technology is more advanced. You could fully understand the weapon, grasp its principles. While replicating it, you could also research countermeasures. Some laboratories are even equipped with printers. After scanning, you can directly feed the blueprint into the printer. You can immediately assemble an identical replica. And there are dozens of such instruments in this one laboratory alone, each more unbelievably powerful than the last. This set of instruments is entirely capable of determining battlefield outcomes. Yet here at Herta's, it's just an ordinary instrument in a casually established laboratory. Probably not activated for who knows how long. Such heaven-defying gadgets are just gathering dust here at Herta's. Truly, the more one learns, the more one realizes their insignificance before a genius. Bai Luan closed the cabinet door, not taking out the instrument. There weren't many materials in this laboratory. Although he had indeed tinkered with and created the flying backpack in the little black room. This was reality. He had only learned how to make the flying backpack through the little black room. He gained manufacturing experience. The necessary materials still had to be acquired by himself. His learning in the little black room this time was actually a bit lazy. He only learned how to use these instruments. But Bai Luan didn't bother to learn their operating principles. Any random instrument here would have enough theoretical knowledge to crush someone several times. Not to mention the exaggerated time cost. Even with the little black room, it would take years of hard study there. Years to fully understand them. Such a life would be too arduous. He'd rather take things slowly. However, the current Bai Luan had no problem working as a researcher in this laboratory. He could conduct small experiments. Bai Luan looked around the laboratory. Those instruments, which were once strange and unknown, began to become familiar in his eyes. Upon seeing them, his mind automatically brought up their usage methods and functions. It felt like coming home. The feeling of knowledge filling his mind was wonderful. Although to others, it would seem like he had just stepped into this laboratory less than 5 minutes ago and already understood all the facilities within. But how much hardship and tears were involved, only Bai Luan himself knew. And the system, as well as Herta in the little black room. All right, I guess I'm not that lonely after all. This trip was truly fruitful. Time to go. Bai Luan's action of entering the laboratory, browsing for 5 minutes, then walking out with a satisfied expression, completely baffled Aha. Ultimately, Aha categorized it as a peculiar behavior unique to geniuses. Aha was not lacking in patience. He was still very keen to see what kind of big show this little brat could put on. This little brat who dared to pin the blame on him. Of course, Bai Luan could indeed put on a big show right now. It would greatly energize Aha, and it would only take one sentence. You, a dignified Ian, spying on me, a mere mortal. Saying this sentence would definitely shock Aha. After all, Aha had once disguised himself as an ordinary person. He had hidden in a Kivali's train, maintaining the disguise for a long time without being exposed. Yet now he was detected while spying on a mortal. Do you think Aha would be amused? But Bai Luan didn't say it. because he felt that if he said that, Aha would probably just give him a mask. Give him a mask as a toy. He decided to keep this as a trump card, to be played when he was being chased and desperately needed power. Then he would unleash a burst of Trailblaze energy shockwave and thoroughly enjoy it. Who could outwit me? The Aeon of Elation should be used this way. The false masked fools were still guessing what the Aeon of Elation wanted. But the true followers of joy were already scheming against Aha. Bai Luan stepped out of the laboratory, the valve behind him closing. At the same time, his stomach rumbled. This reminded Bai Luan. As a struggling worker in his previous life, Bai Luan rarely ate breakfast. So, after coming to Herta's, he naturally didn't eat breakfast either. It was now noon, and he had been running around here and there. Hunger was starting to set in. I need to find something to eat. Bai Luan stroked his chin, beginning to search for the kitchen in Herta's massive residence. The closest kitchen to him seemed to be quite large. Who cares, as long as it can cook? Towards the kitchen, off we go. Bai Luan walked for half an hour and finally reached the kitchen. When he saw the kitchen sign, he wiped his sweat. A mode of transport is urgently needed. Although Bai Luan had only been here for 2 days, he deeply realized the significance of the emergence of transportation for the human species. Bai Luan entered the kitchen. What greeted his eyes was an enormous kitchen, almost as large as 2 cafeteria halls. Sinks, cutting boards, arrays of gleaming chef's knives, humming microwaves. Every cooking utensil he could imagine, and even those he couldn't. They were neatly arranged, like soldiers awaiting inspection. Filming a food video here, just showing off the kitchenware, displaying the arsenal. The king's treasury would be enough to make viewers click in awe. Of course, Herta's kitchen, how could its greatness be judged solely by its size? The most unique aspect of Herta's kitchen lay in its complete food production system. All sorts of ingredients grew and matured vibrantly in the area adjacent to the kitchen. Then flowed like a stream into this kitchen via silent mechanical conveyor belts. However, the conveyor belts weren't working now. Perhaps they only operated when Herta suddenly felt like cooking. In the ingredient production area, though, there were quite a few small Hertas maintaining things. These small Hertas were petite, like little sprites, capable of flight. They darted through the air, diligently working like little bees. Let's call these small Hertas sprite Hertas. Some raised chickens, some fed cows, some picked fruits, some watered plants. A farm stay next to the kitchen, is it? Truly a grand gesture. He wouldn't need to go to the little black room to cook. But could he take ingredients? He'd better ask. Bai Luan took a step and walked towards the ingredient production area. As soon as he stepped into this area, several sprite Hertas surrounded him, flying around Bai Luan and staring at him. Can I have some ingredients? The sprite Hertas nodded, then continued to stare at Bai Luan. Does this mean they're asking me what I want? Potatoes, peas, rice, meat. Bai Luan reported the ingredients he needed while thinking about the meal he wanted to cook. After listening, the sprites immediately flew away. Soon, a group of sprite Hertas flew back. Each sprite Herta was carrying ingredients. They thoughtfully delivered them to the kitchen. Thank you all. The sprite Hertas nodded, waved at Bai Luan, and returned to their posts. Bai Luan briefly checked the ingredients. They were all very fresh and of excellent quality. He nodded, very satisfied, and rolled up his sleeves. Such good ingredients, can't let them go to waste. Ingredients splashed into water, cutting board gently clacked showcasing knife skills. Wok tossed and stir-fried, dishes served with scattered green onions. Braised pork with potatoes, kung pao chicken, stir-fried pork with green peppers. And egg drop soup. 3 dishes and 1 soup, perfectly done. He scooped rice from the rice cooker and took out a pair of chopsticks. Time to eat. He picked up a glistening piece of green pepper with slightly stir-fried shredded pork, mixed it with distinct grains of rice, and put it in his mouth. Holy crap, how is this so delicious? Bai Luan looked at the 3 dishes and 1 soup before him with a shocked expression. In his previous life, while squandering his fortune, he had eaten at many high-end restaurants. But they were utterly crushed compared to these 3 dishes and 1 soup. Had his cooking skills improved again? No, his cooking skills were just decent. The ingredients. Could it be that? Curio, extremely delicious Kung Pao chicken. Effect, an ordinary home-cooked meal, but even the most discerning gourmet will praise its deliciousness after eating it. So it turned into a curio. By the way, is it okay to eat a curio? Bai Luan looked at the 3 dishes and 1 soup before him. He shoveled a mouthful of rice into his mouth. Since things have come to this, let's eat first. Chapter 12, I learned so much. Having eaten and drunk his fill, he cleaned everything he had used. He packed up the leftover food, which also solved his dinner problem. But there was an issue. Bai Luan looked at the 2-person portion of food with a troubled expression. It had been too long since he last cooked. He got carried away, making food for himself. Combined with his hunger, he felt like he could eat a whole cow. So he ended up making too much. He would keep 1 portion for his dinner, but what should he do with the other? Throwing it away was out of the question. Waste was shameful. Keeping it overnight for breakfast the next day was a bit much. Are there any storage methods, like a refrigerator AI here? The kitchen is so large and well-equipped, there should be one. He should look around a bit. Bai Luan, carrying the 2 packed bento boxes, began to explore the kitchen. That one could be used for desserts and cakes, this one for pasta. This area for skewers, and over there for deep frying. No matter what, the scale of this kitchen was simply too large. If there were enough people, you could completely open a food street here. Just as Bai Luan was complaining about Herta's habit. Creating incredibly luxurious facilities on a whim. Only to abandon them to gather dust once her interest waned. His eyes suddenly lit up. Bai Luan saw a purple refrigerator. Excellent, this is exactly what I need. Bai Luan walked with a cheerful step to the refrigerator. Just as he was about to open the refrigerator AI door, an electronic voice suddenly sounded. Who are you? Where did that voice come from? Bai Luan looked left and right, but couldn't find the source of the sound. Take your hand off my face. The refrigerator AI spoke. Bai Luan released the refrigerator AI door. He saw a dark blue dot appear where he had been holding it. This seemed to be the appearance of the intelligent AI installed in this refrigerator AI. By the way, why would you install an AI in a refrigerator AI? Next to it was the ingredient production line. Ingredients were taken as needed, so there was no need for preservation at all. Could it be that inside this refrigerator AI, there was some peerless treasure? 1,000-year-old ginseng, a 10,000-year-old sculpture, a 1,000,000-year-old turtle. I'll ask again, who are you? Why are you trying to open me? My name is Bai Luan. I just used the kitchen to make a meal today. I made too much, so I'm planning to put 1 portion in you. Bai Luan slightly raised the bento box in his hand to show it to the refrigerator AI. Cooking, there are actually other people cooking here. Since Ms. Herta's enthusiasm for cooking faded, I haven't seen a living person cook in a long time. Does that mean it's always been the Herta puppets or Ms. Herta herself cooking? I didn't expect Herta to have a period where she was passionate about cooking. I just wonder what level her culinary skills reached. Bai Luan believed that Herta could make a good meal. But he also believed that Herta wouldn't cook honestly. This was also recorded in Herta's PV. By the way, how good is your preservation ability? Bai Luan's casual remark seemed to have completely breached the refrigerator AI's defenses. It trembled slightly and roared. You dare to question my professional abilities? So, you're very good at preservation then? Of course, I'm super good at preservation. My internal structure uses unparalleled technology. Whatever state something goes in, that's exactly how it comes out. The oldest dessert stored in me is older than you are. But if you take it out, it still tastes as if it just came out of the oven. Perhaps if he had heard about the function of this refrigerator AI when he first woke up. This morning, Bai Luan would have been shocked. But after experiencing the successive shocks of the flying carpet, the botanical garden, and the laboratory, Bai Luan's acceptance of these extremely powerful tools had greatly increased. It was hard to imagine he had only been here for less than 2 days. It was also hard to imagine how long he had actually been here, including the time in the little black room. So, facing the refrigerator AI's proud self-praise, Bai Luan merely said perfunctorily, "Wow, that's amazing. Can I put this bento box in now?" "Why are you so calm about accepting this?" "Because creations like you are everywhere here." "That's hurtful, but it's true." But then, the refrigerator AI changed its tone and said, "But being stored by me isn't that simple. Ms. Herta has imported a large amount of delicious food data parameters into me, which serve as the basis for my judgment as a food arbiter. If the food you make is deemed not delicious enough by my inspection, then your food is not qualified to be stored by me." "Is this a trial?" "That's right, this is a trial. Food that isn't delicious enough has no value in being stored, let alone being eaten by Ms. Herta. I shall guard Ms. Herta's taste buds." No matter what, Bai Luan did hear a sense of conviction from this AI. Herta put too much into the program when she wrote it. The refrigerator AI didn't explain further. Instead, several mechanical arms suddenly extended from the main body of the refrigerator AI. They took the bento box from Bai Luan's hand. Bai Luan expressionlessly slapped away the mechanical arm, the one that tried to take the bento box from his other hand. "Don't touch my dinner, I'm only putting one box in." "What's with the arrogance? Maybe not even one box will get in." The bento box was delivered to the AI's front by the mechanical arm. A scanning light shot out from the AI's eye, scanning the bento box up and down. The refrigerator AI evaluated very seriously. Even the dot on it furrowed its brow. Bai Luan watched curiously from the side. He was also quite interested to know what level his casually made home-cooked meal could reach. "Wait a minute, something's not right. 10, no, 9 parts of it aren't right." The refrigerator AI's incredulous voice came. At the same time, the mechanical arm wasn't idle. It gently lifted the bento box with extremely high precision, opened the lid's clasp, and began to observe the food inside. It's clearly just home-cooked food. And the ingredients are just the normal quality for Ms. Herta's residence. But why? "What's wrong? You look like you're about to crash." "Your food has been rated as the best meal by my inspection system." "No, is the cheat code written by the system so powerful?" Now, his cooking, which was only generally tasty, could reach this level. If he went back to the little black room to further refine his skills, Bai Luan couldn't even imagine how magical the food he made would be. Would the food he made come with a sparkling special effect? Could it cure diseases? Would clothes burst off after eating it? Bursting clothes might be a bit much. He felt like he'd be chased and attacked by diners. "I retract my previous presumptuous remarks about you. You are a respectable chef." The mechanical arm carefully fastened the bento box. Then, with a gesture like carrying a grand sedan chair, almost escorting it, it tucked it into the refrigerator AI. Bai Luan also took this opportunity to see the interior of the refrigerator AI. Originally, Bai Luan thought the refrigerator AI didn't have much storage space. But the moment the refrigerator AI opened, Bai Luan realized he was wrong. This small refrigerator AI actually used space-related technology. Its internal space was much larger than it appeared. Various delicacies were arranged horizontally and vertically inside, looking densely packed. This also explained why a dessert could be stored for so long. Because there were simply too many delicious things, it never got its turn. The mechanical arm directly sent that bento box to the best compartment of the refrigerator AI and stored it. Then, the refrigerator AI door closed with a click. "I hope you cook more often and add more delicacies to my storage." Rather than cooking, Bai Luan now wanted to dismantle this refrigerator AI to understand its spatial storage technology. Just then, his phone in Bai Luan's pocket vibrated. This was the time he had set earlier. 4 o'clock had arrived. This also meant something important. Bai Luan could finally go back to his room and lie down. He simply bid farewell to the refrigerator AI and headed straight for his room. "Rest, I must rest immediately. I've learned far too much in this one day." Some time after Bai Luan left, several Herta puppets came to the refrigerator AI. They tapped it gently, and woke up the AI. Is Ms. Herta going to have dinner? The Herta puppets nodded slightly. It is not widely known that the refrigerator AI has a strict hierarchy within. All levels have the same preservation ability. But from highest to lowest, the deliciousness also decreases accordingly. Ms. Herta always takes delicacies from the very top when she eats. As for the bottom ones, they just sit there, they won't go bad anyway. The refrigerator AI's mechanical arm appeared. It took out what it currently deemed the most delicious food from inside the refrigerator AI. Bai Luan's bento box. According to the data, this bento box is most suitable for Ms. Herta's dinner. The bento box was delivered to Herta. A bento box, and it's even packaged in a generic bento box, is the program faulty? Herta then thought it was unlikely that the program she wrote was faulty. So she opened the bento box. The Herta puppets surrounding Herta handed her a pair of chopsticks. Herta took the chopsticks and looked at the 3 dishes and 1 soup inside the box. The presentation isn't bad. Herta picked up a piece of diced chicken and ate it. It's quite tasty. My program really wouldn't have any problems. Chapter 13. No more words needed. While Herta was eating her bento, Bai Luan was also devouring his own bento. Though compared to Herta's elegant eating, Bai Luan was much more rapid. He finished in no time, then went to the newly built wash basin. He cleaned all the dishes. Bai Luan shook the water off his hands and sat back on the bed. Looking at the completely renovated room, Bai Luan couldn't help but exclaim. It actually doubled in size, and you can't tell that construction only started this morning. Ms. Herta is truly amazing. Not to mention any signs of renovation. Even though this place had just undergone extensive expansion. The items he had placed before leaving were still in the exact same positions. How did those robots manage to avoid that pile of clutter? And carve out individual private bathrooms? It was truly astonishing. Indeed, his decision to stay here was absolutely correct. After once again congratulating himself on his past choice, Bai Luan no longer paid attention to his newly expanded room, but focused on his work. After all, the treatment here was excellent. To continue enjoying it, he had to avoid being kicked out. He compiled a list of everything needed to solve the botanical garden problem. Looking at the file he had edited, Bai Luan began to ponder. The dog-like boss was always known for being inscrutable. Of course, this wasn't to say Herta was a dog-like boss. From Bai Luan's perspective, Herta was the kind of boss you'd be hard-pressed to find. Even with a lantern. While she demanded excellent professional skills and would immediately dismiss anyone who made a mistake, she never skimped on the benefits. Anticipating the superior's thoughts was also part of the performance review. So Bai Luan now had to consider something important. Should he directly send the list to the Herta puppet? Or should he exchange pleasantries, butter her up, and then present the list? Generally speaking, the latter was highly effective for dog-like bosses. Though being highly effective didn't necessarily mean it would solve the problem. But Herta probably didn't care for such useless flattery. Using that trick would likely be pointless. Then he'd just send the file and ask. He didn't have many questions today. And they were all related to adapting to the botanical garden work. Bai Luan opened the chat software and sent the file to the Herta puppet. Bai Luan, file. Bai Luan, Ms. Herta, these items are needed to solve the botanical garden problem. Herta, adapting so quickly. Herta, it seems I underestimated you. I should have taken you to a few more places. Judging from the reply, the result was good. Bai Luan looked at the reply message and breathed a sigh of relief. After these 2 replies, the chat interface went silent for a while. However, the file showed that it had been received by the other party and was likely being reviewed. Upon realizing this, a sense of trepidation suddenly welled up in his heart. It was like being in school, with the teacher at the podium and you in the audience. He's grading your homework right in front of you, that same anxious feeling. Bai Luan didn't know how Herta would view this file. But it was indeed the result of his diligent effort. However, based on his past life's experience of being worked to death, Effort didn't always guarantee a reward. Just as Bai Luan was pondering how to face various outcomes in his mind, his phone rang, drawing his attention back. Herta, I've looked at the file, no issues. Herta recommends a procurement and transport robot to you. Herta, from now on, just send any materials you need to procure directly to it. No need to show me. Herta, if you need any daily necessities in the future, you can also add them to the procurement list and buy them together. Herta, everything is focused on solving the botanical garden problem. You don't need to worry about the procurement budget. Looking at the continuous stream of messages, Bai Luan felt greatly relieved. Herta was not a dog-like boss, and the present was not the past. Everything was different. Bai Luan, I understand. Bai Luan added the friend Herta recommended. Just as he was about to send the file, he found another message from Herta. Herta, oh right, good job. Seeing this message, a touch of emotion welled up in Bai Luan's heart. Oh no, I'm going to become a Herta-only stan now. If he had encountered such a leader in his previous life, he probably would have sworn allegiance on the spot. Bai Luan, Ms. Herta is great, no need to say more. Bai Luan sent this message. After that, the Herta puppet did not reply again. After the Herta puppet stopped replying, Bai Luan shifted his attention entirely to communicating with the procurement robot. Bai Luan, file Ms. Herta told me to come, she said to just give you the list. Procurement robot, okay, estimated arrival tomorrow. Seeing the okay emoji, Bai Luan's mouth twitched. It really was as intelligent and efficient as ever. Bai Luan recalled the map in his mind, then found the location of the procurement department. It wasn't too far, about half an hour if he ran. He'd pick a time to go tomorrow. The botanical garden matter was now resolved. Bai Luan turned off his phone screen, then looked at the pile of clutter. Although only one day had passed, the current Bai Luan and the Bai Luan of last night could already be considered two different people. So that pile of clutter now might no longer be clutter. Bai Luan moved an already opened cardboard box from the pile. This was one of the boxes he had opened yesterday. Inside were all white panels. They were quite heavy. Yesterday, because he didn't know what material it was or what it could be used for, he classified it as clutter. With his level last night, everything would have been classified as clutter, right? After a self-deprecating thought, Bai Luan took out a white panel. White metal panels, cut perfectly, each the same size, very neat. And quite heavy, a whole box was quite weighty. Of course, Bai Luan still didn't know what material it was. However, he could search online. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of it last night, but rather that even if he had searched last night, it would have been meaningless. So he hadn't done it. But now Bai Luan needed to know if this thing could be used to build a flying backpack. And if it could, the current Bai Luan could actually make it into a backpack. They say that after 3 days apart, one should be looked at with new eyes. Now he didn't even need 3 days. 1 day was enough to complete a super evolution. Praise the little black room of the system. I am not the sole reason for your progress, don't forget to thank yourself. Sure enough, I'm awesome too. Bai Luan happily opened his phone, then tapped on the Interstellar Peace Company's procurement software, found the Identify by Picture function, and took a photo of the metal panel in his hand. The loading interface for identification appeared on the phone screen. Bai Luan's gaze fell on the panel in his hand. Although it was just clutter forgotten by Herta, its presence in Herta's home proved its value. It shouldn't be some ordinary material. The lower limit shouldn't be low. Just then, the software identified the information of this panel. Panem alloy. Bai Luan then scanned the price next to it. A string of zeros was very intimidating. Ones, tens, hundreds, millions. How much? Bai Luan looked at the white panel in his hand in disbelief. This thing was priced in the millions per unit, which meant something shocking. Bai Luan looked at the box of panels by the bed. This one box wouldn't be over 10 million, would it? If one box was over 10 million, then what about the rest? Bai Luan looked at the pile of boxes, his so-called clutter. How many credit points would that be? Herta was casually paying him a salary worth several of his lives. It was too terrifying, truly too terrifying. Bai Luan lightly patted his chest, soothing the heart that had been startled by the large numbers. In his previous life, he had spent money recklessly. But here he was just a small fry, a fraction of a fraction. Everything really was different now. Soon, Bai Luan's mood calmed down. It seemed that compared to what he had seen and heard these past 2 days, these things were the most mundane. Casually stealing an instrument from the laboratory would probably be dozens of times more expensive than these things. These things are nothing. Bai Luan then searched online for the uses of this alloy, and finally came to a conclusion. Indeed, expensive things only have one drawback: they're expensive. The material for the flying backpack was sorted. He just needed to find a way to get to the laboratory. As for other materials, he'd need to check. Bai Luan got up and started opening blind boxes again. In the remaining boxes, prices varied, but most started in the 5 digits. As he looked, Bai Luan grew numb. Some could be used as materials for a flying backpack, while others were still useless, identified as expensive clutter. Bai Luan took out the useful materials and put away the remaining clutter. After tidying everything up, Bai Luan wiped his sweat. Finally done. The remaining materials, he'd mix them into the botanical garden's procurement list later. Of course, when mixing them in, he'd have to check the prices. For expensive ones, he'd work a bit longer before sneaking them in. Bai Luan took a shower, changed into pajamas, washed his clothes, and hung them up to dry. Then he lay down on the bed and turned his head to look at the pile of materials he had sorted. I wonder what abilities the backpack will gain after it's made into a wondrous item. Suddenly, a flash of white caught Bai Luan's eye. It was the paper airplane he had folded, which had fallen there at some point. It wasn't very conspicuous, and he hadn't noticed it when he was moving things earlier. Bai Luan flipped off the bed, walked over and picked it up. It was quite lucky. It fell on the ground and I didn't step on it. Bai Luan placed it on the wooden table. Speaking of which, this was his first wondrous item, wasn't it? Suddenly intrigued, Bai Luan took out a blank piece of paper and began to fold it. Before long, a paper crane was folded and placed on the table. It's been a long time since I folded one. It seems my skill hasn't declined. Bai Luan extended a finger and poked the paper crane on the table. Then the paper crane flew up. It flew up. Bai Luan stared at the paper crane, flapping its wings like a living creature. Frozen in his seat. After a long while, he finally reacted. Hi. Wondrous item, paper crane. It's alive, it's alive. It lived without even using electroshock therapy. Who's going to fill my need for a Frankenstein here? Yes, it's alive. You created life, but other than that, it has no abilities. Chapter 14, You Can't Hide for Long. I'd thought of things being absurd, but not this absurd. Looking at the paper crane that had landed on his hand, Bai Luan was at a loss for words. Ryuan created life, researching this and that for it, while he did it with just a piece of paper. This was truly too absurd. Aha, who was peeking at him, must be exclaiming magnificent right now. Looking at the paper crane in his hand, Bai Luan scratched his head. A hint of distress flashing across his face. How should he deal with this little guy? He couldn't exactly say he'd created a life, could he? His creation of life was different from Ryuan Mei's. Ryuan Mei had gone through extensive scientific research to create life. So she could create life herself and knew how she created it. He, on the other hand, had simply and unknowingly created a new life, due to the abilities granted by the system. This meant that he was extremely prone to being exposed. If Herta were to question him, and he stammered, unable to explain, it would be very hard to avoid suspicion that he wasn't a product of abundance. It seemed he couldn't let Herta know about the existence of this paper crane for now. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to convince Herta not to dissect him. During this time, he needed to find a way to subtly hint to the Herta puppets that he was studying drone and biomimicry technology. That way, the paper crane's appearance would seem more reasonable in Ms. Herta's eyes. But what if Ms. Herta used some inspection instrument and found no mechanical structure inside, wouldn't that expose him? Bai Luan looked helpless, staring at the paper crane in his palm. What should I do with you? Perhaps it's better to just ask Herta herself. In a flash, Bai Luan arrived in the little black room. Herta first closed Bai Luan's botanical garden notes, then observed the surroundings, realizing it was Bai Luan's room. It's already evening. Herta quickly analyzed the current situation. Then, with a clear objective, walked straight to Bai Luan's slightly messy bed. She sat down unceremoniously, her skirt pressing into a neat crease, as if the bed was a throne prepared just for her. Ms. Herta, I have a question for you. If I suddenly created life in front of you, what would you think of me? Herta first shot Bai Luan a look that screamed, "Are you crazy?" Then continued to read Bai Luan's botanical garden notes. Although Bai Luan had only written 1 day's worth of content, due to the time difference in the little black room, she hadn't finished reading it. Originally, she didn't want to read it, but the Q version Herta that Bai Luan drew was very appealing to her. She hadn't wanted to read it in front of Bai Luan, but whenever Bai Luan left, she'd pick up the book, only for Bai Luan to immediately reappear, leaving her no chance to secretly finish it. Eventually, she just gave up. As a genius, why should I care about others' opinions? Bai Luan, on the other hand, was a bit speechless. Why was Herta always holding that notebook every time he came in? It was almost her idle animation. Honestly, it was a bit embarrassing to have his casually drawn childish pictures being seriously looked at. She was the one who said his drawings were childish. And now she was the one enjoying them so much. Didn't you say it was childish? Herta turned a page expressionlessly and said something unexpected. This is inspecting your work. All right, you always have a point, but my question just now wasn't nonsense. Oh. Herta closed the botanical garden notes and looked at Bai Luan with interest. You mean you actually created life? Yes, I folded a paper crane from a piece of paper. And then the paper crane came to life. Just one piece of paper. Yes. Folded into a paper crane. Exactly. And then it came to life. Ahem. Herta rolled her eyes at Bai Luan, then reopened the botanical garden notes. Hey, don't you believe me? It's an ability the system gave me. Next time, get to the point sooner. She closed the notes again and looked at Bai Luan. You really created life. Of course, look, I don't even have the paper crane in my hand. If it hadn't succeeded, the paper crane should still be in this little black room. So what? Herta tilted her head, her tone so flat it had no ripple. Are you telling me this because you want me to open a bottle of champagne to celebrate? You know that's not very likely, right? A faint, playful curve appeared at the corner of her lips. No, I just want to know what Ms. Herta would do to me if she found out about this. After all, when I was created by the system, you almost dissected me. I told you then I was just teasing you. How could a genius like me be so cruel? Did that scare you so badly? Bai Luan's eyes lit up, and he said something hopeful. So, even if Ms. Herta saw that paper crane that turned into a living thing, she wouldn't dissect me. Herta's expression was calm. She thought about it seriously, then said plainly. Hard to say. Bai Luan's joyful expression immediately fell. However, the instant his face dropped, he clearly caught it. Herta's lips, incredibly swiftly and subtly, curved upwards. A tiny, almost illusory, yet absolutely real arc, filled with the pleasure of a successful prank. He said, displeased at the realization. Are you making fun of me? Exposed, Herta showed no embarrassment. Instead, she met his gaze calmly, even lifting her chin slightly, as if admiring her masterpiece. Herta concluded with interest, not hiding her amusement. This genius has to admit, it's quite fun. So, what's the serious answer? The serious answer is, don't worry so much. Ms. Herta won't pay too much attention to you. She's a very busy person. Of course, if you jump out and make yourself conspicuous, then pretend I didn't say anything. Herta had a teasing smile on her face as she said her next words. If you're willing to spill all your secrets, then I'd be very willing to spend energy studying you. I really don't want to be studied by you. So just keep it hidden. Unless one day you can't hide it anymore, and this genius finds you. Then you should worry. No, you should worry now. After all, this genius has a pair of eyes skilled at discovery. Then at least until I can stand on my own 2 feet, I need to hide myself well. Just be an ordinary genius. You won't be able to hide for long. Are you that confident in yourself? Of course I am Herta. I'll hide it just to show you. Bai Luan secretly made up his mind, starting an unspoken competition. Act like a genius, but also act like not too much of a genius. He might be a genius, but it's unlikely he's that much of a genius. Bai Luan seamlessly returned from the little black room to reality. The paper crane in his palm energetically flapping its wings. Knowing there was no immediate danger, Bai Luan felt much more at ease. He extended his index finger and gently stroked the paper crane's head. I'll find a chance to take you to the botanical garden. You can move around there from now on. The paper crane looked at Bai Luan and nodded. Bai Luan thought for a moment, then added something important. When you see other people, you have to pretend to be a normal paper crane, okay? The paper crane nodded again. It felt like keeping a little Chizuru wasn't a bad idea. You'll be called Chizuru. He just didn't know if it needed to eat. What would paper eat? Paper. Never mind, he'd think about it tomorrow. Bai Luan stretched, ready for bed. But as he stretched, his gaze fell upon the paper airplane oddity he had created earlier. Bai Luan's eyes scanned back and forth between the paper crane and the paper airplane. And a bold idea suddenly emerged. The ability of this paper airplane would make him win any competition, no matter who he was up against. So what if he made this paper airplane compete against the paper crane? Chizuru, come and race this paper airplane. Chizuru immediately flew up at his words, looking determined. Bai Luan picked up the paper airplane and began to count down. When Bai Luan finished counting from 3 to 1, Chizuru instantly darted forward, while Bai Luan merely gave the paper airplane a gentle toss. Then, a magical scene unfolded. After the paper airplane left his hand, it didn't follow any physical parabolic trajectory. Instead, it was like a white lightning bolt catapulted by space itself, tearing through the air with a whoosh, instantly catching up to the white blur sprinting ahead. It hovered precisely in front of Chizuru, no more, no less. Exactly one sharp nose cone length ahead. After that, no matter how Chizuru accelerated, turned, or tried to shake off the paper airplane, it never succeeded. It's even a conceptual god. Bai Luan began to ponder the uses of this oddity. If he didn't have other means of communication, having Chizuru stay by his side and giving the paper airplane to someone else would mean that no matter where he was, a simple toss of the paper airplane would bring it to him. However, there was a problem with that plan. Bai Luan's gaze went to his phone. The entire universe was connected to the internet now. Worlds without internet were, after all, a minority. It could only serve as a backup, just in case. Bai Luan briefly comforted Chizuru, who was disheartened by losing to the paper airplane, and lay back on his bed. Bai Luan stared at the ceiling, his eyes somewhat unfocused. Not long ago, he had been staring at the pale, cold, despair-filled ceiling of a hospital room reeking of disinfectant. A satisfied, almost ethereal smile crept quietly onto his lips. His second day in the Honkai Star Rail world had been quite good. He slowly closed his eyes, his consciousness sinking into dreams. What he thought about during the day, he dreamt about at night. The memories before sleep led him to dream of the past. The city's neon lights, cold instruments. The familiar smell of disinfectant seemed to stubbornly pierce his nostrils once. Chapter 15, just wanted to thank you again. Late-stage liver cancer, your time is running out. When the doctor opposite him said these words with a solemn expression, the thin diagnostic report slipped from his fingers, twirling like a withered leaf falling prematurely, silently drifting towards the cold floor tiles. Bai Luan lit paper money, one by one in front of his relatives' graves. The flickering flames licked the entrance to the yellow springs, illuminating the prematurely solidified smiles on the tombstones. His parents, who toiled their entire lives without enjoying any blessings. And his grandparents, who raised him from infancy, but didn't live long enough to receive his care in return. He had promised them he would make something of himself. And he had worked tirelessly until now. What was it all for? He probably wouldn't last until next year. I'm going to die. Next year, who will sweep your graves? Bai Luan looked at the paper money in his hand. He grabbed a handful of unburnt paper money, and with all his strength, tossed it towards the hazy sky. The paper money scattered with the wind, a tribute to both his relatives and himself. Bai Luan resigned from his job and withdrew all his savings from over the years, watching the stacks of red banknotes fill his rented room. He picked up a bundled stack of money, held it in his hand, and stared at it. His previously expressionless face forced out a smile. This wasn't my money, this was my first half of life. Let's live a little more clearly. He had suffered his whole life, it was time to taste some sweetness. He tossed the bundle of money into the air, and the red banknotes immediately scattered, spreading out like fireworks, falling like rain. Bai Luan, with that forced smile, spun around in this rain of money. Round and round. From now on, I'll do whatever I want. High-end buffet restaurants he never dared to look at before. He would treat them like ordinary diners, eating and drinking to his heart's content. Blasting DJ music, a wildly dancing crowd, dazzling lights, a chaotic throng. And Bai Luan, equally wild and mixed in, dancing. He felt like his life had reached its climax. He frantically spent money on Honkai Star Rail. Throwing all his gacha pool plans out the window, he would pull for whoever he wanted. A person with no future doesn't need savings. Hahaha, I'm so happy. I'm so happy, ah. In the most luxurious room of a high-end hotel, Bai Luan leaned over the toilet and experienced severe pain. Feeling the intense pain in his body, he struggled to crawl to the sink. The mirror reflected a sallow, sunken-eyed face, his forehead hair drenched with sweat. Looking at his haggard reflection in the mirror, Bai Luan couldn't understand. For the past month, he had lived a life of spending 10,000 a day, eating everything he wanted and doing everything he wanted. Why could I not smile? He used his fingers to pull the skin of his cheeks upwards, contorting his face into a smile uglier than a cry. Looking at the smile, forcibly pulled out by his fingers. What do I truly want? Another wave of intense pain hit, and Bai Luan fainted in the hotel bathroom. When he woke up again, he was lying in a hospital bed, dressed in a patient gown, with an IV drip in his arm. Bai Luan sat up, and a surprised voice came from the next bed. Young man, you're awake. A middle-aged woman's voice, surprised yet tired, came from the adjacent bed. You're finally awake, I'll call the nurse for you. She enthusiastically pressed the call bell. Bai Luan watched quietly, feeling that it didn't matter anymore, and symbolically offered a word of thanks. Seeing Bai Luan's expression, the middle-aged woman encouraged him. Young man, don't give up, there's still a chance. Life still has to go on, after all, as long as you don't give up, there's still hope. Bai Luan replied with a hollow smile. You're right. Then he lay back down. On the bedside table, his phone was still there. When he turned it on, the battery was low. Bai Luan struggled to get up, searching for his charger. Damn it. It seemed to be lost. He would complain to that damn hotel later. Bai Luan looked at the red glow of the battery indicator. He'd make do. He opened Alipay and checked his balance. His savings of over a decade, after a month of lavish spending, now stood at 101,256.3. What should I do with this money? Could I possibly spend it all on Honkai Star Rail? Young man, were you looking for a charger just now? I have one here, but I'm not sure if the plug is compatible. Bai Luan glanced at it, it was the right one. He remained silent for a moment, then looked at his phone's red battery indicator again, and finally took it. Thanks. This thank you was much more sincere than the previous one. Young man, do you also have cancer? Yes. So young, how did you end up with this? Bad luck, I guess. The middle-aged woman hadn't expected such a self-deprecating answer. She paused, then gave an awkward laugh. Soon, the nurse arrived with the doctor. The doctor was the one who had informed Bai Luan of his cancer. He looked serious and recounted Bai Luan's dire physical condition. Bai Luan listened indifferently, finally saying to the doctor, "I'm not going to treat it." The doctor was stunned. He looked at Bai Luan's lifeless eyes, and his expression finally turned into a heavy, helpless sigh. Before he silently left with the nurse. "Young man, why aren't you going to treat it? Think of your family." The woman couldn't help but speak again. "They're all gone." Bai Luan interrupted her, his voice as light as a sigh, yet carrying the power to sever everything. "They're all gone." He turned his back to her, like a stone statue refusing communication. However, soon, suppressed, intermittent sobs came from behind him. Bai Luan turned around and saw the woman who had just been trying to comfort him, now wiping away tears with the back of her rough hand, her shoulders trembling slightly. "Young man, I'm sorry, but I'm scared. They all say this disease is serious. I don't know if I can be cured." "You can be cured, don't give up." Bai Luan felt a pang inside and offered a word of comfort. Just then, a knock came at the door, accompanied by a child's voice. "Grandma." "Mom, I brought Juan to see you." The middle-aged woman quickly composed herself and greeted her granddaughter with a smile. "Grandma, get better soon." The middle-aged woman hugged her granddaughter, rubbed her head, and said with a kind smile, "Grandma will be well very soon." And the woman's son stood by, smiling at Bai Luan. Bai Luan watched the steadily rising battery level on his phone. He seemed to know where the rest of his money should go. Bai Luan got up to change his clothes, unplugged the charger, and handed it to the middle-aged woman. "Thank you for your charger. But you just started charging it." "It's enough." Bai Luan's gaze swept over the battery level, which had turned from red to green, and a genuine, relieved smile appeared on his face. "I'm being discharged." The little girl, Juan, looked up and innocently asked a question. "Big brother, is your illness cured?" Bai Luan squatted down, gently stroked the little girl's head, and smiled gently. "Yes, it's cured. Big brother's illness is already cured." Bai Luan looked at the elderly woman and said something reassuring. "So, your grandma will also be well very soon." Bai Luan found the doctor who had been treating him and asked about the patient in the same room. "How is the older sister in the next bed?" "Early stage, there's a lot of hope. It's just her family's financial situation is really difficult. And the cost of follow-up treatment. I still have over 100,000 in my card. After settling my fees, the rest, please use it for her." The doctor was astonished. "You?" "I'm a goner." Bai Luan calmly pronounced his own death sentence. "But this money, if spent elsewhere, wouldn't even make a ripple. Spent on her, at least someone can still see the light." He paused. "As for me..." He looked out at the hazy sky, a fleeting smile playing on his lips. "Let heaven decide." And so, Bai Luan's last bit of savings, carrying the residual warmth of his life, flowed into another river yearning to live. Bai Luan was discharged from the hospital despite the doctor's dissuasion. Before he left, the doctor called out to Bai Luan. At least let me do something for you." Bai Luan turned back, saw the tears in the doctor's eyes, thought for a moment, and then, smiling, told him the location of his family's old graves. "If they overcome their illness, please sweep my family's graves for me every year." After saying this, Bai Luan waved, turned, walked out of the hospital, and slowly headed towards death. It was evening then, and the streets were bustling with people, no one paying him any mind. Bai Luan walked down the street, looking up at the dazzling Herta poster on the tall buildings. If I were in that world, my illness would probably be cured easily, right? What was I thinking? Bai Luan shook his head. Grandparents, mom, dad, I didn't make something of myself. But I didn't live in vain either. A sharp pain came from his liver, making Bai Luan's face pale. He stumbled a few steps and sat on a bench by the roadside. He understood now. Why did squandering thousands fail to fill the void in his heart? Why did living a life of excess fail to dispel the coldness in his soul. What he wanted was never those fleeting sensory stimulations. What he wanted was simply to live. Like the ant in the next bed, who had a home to return to, and a grandchild to hold. He wanted the right to be afraid, the right to strive, the right to embrace that faint but real hope of living. Why did I not get even a single chance? I was unwilling to die like this. Life was fading, and his eyelids gradually grew heavy. I don't want to die. Ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling. His phone alarm rang, waking Bai Luan. The dream faded with the sound. Bai Luan opened his eyes in bed. The oppressive past from his dream still vivid. Bai Luan sat up in bed, feeling his healthy body. It was all over. System. What's wrong? Nothing. Bai Luan stretched long and contentedly, his bones emitting a slight crackle. Sunlight fell on his face, bringing a new warmth. A relaxed and utterly genuine smile spread across his lips, as he whispered to the void and to his regained life. I just wanted to thank you again. Chapter 16, It's Broken, I Got Caught. After rising from bed, Bai Luan washed his face, gazing at his remarkably handsome reflection in the mirror. Buddy, you're incredibly handsome. Bai Luan lifted an eyebrow, responding to his own question. I know. Crazy. Disregarding the system's complaints about his eccentric behavior, Bai Luan gestured at Chizuru. Chizuru, come here. Chizuru fluttered its wings and landed on Bai Luan's hand. Bai Luan placed it into his pocket. Wait until I bring you to the botanical garden, then emerge when I summon you. Chizuru nodded its head, then nestled into Bai Luan's pocket. Bai Luan rushed out of his house and began warming up outside his door. He had decided yesterday to jog to the supplies office to gather supplies. Discipline brings forth a superior self. A grin on his face, Bai Luan started to jog following the map in his memory. The grin on Bai Luan's face vanished as he stared at the supplies robot before him, speaking in despair. What do you mean the supplies have already been delivered to the botanical garden? Don't you know? Acquired supplies are delivered straight to their destination. You don't need to arrive in person to retrieve them. Are you telling me that I woke up early this morning, jogged all the way here from my house, and all the effort and energy I spent were for nothing? The electronic eyes of the TV head robot before him blinked, and it stated, I don't comprehend what nothing means, but if it refers to a wasted effort, then I believe so. Bai Luan's mouth twitched, and he comforted himself. At least I exercised. That doesn't conflict with your wasted journey, and you didn't have to wake up this early. The distribution robot mercilessly twisted the knife twice in Bai Luan's chest. What's more, you still have to jog back now. This was the third twist. You haven't had breakfast yet, have you? Stop, that's enough. Why are you, a robot, still pursuing and attacking me? Sir, I am a supplies distribution robot, model DL7. My core program does not include an emotional care module. Seeing Bai Luan's irritated expression, the TV head robot's electronic eyes transformed into an emoticon. Is your intelligence level inadequate to possess even a basic level of emotional intelligence? No, sir, my emotional analysis module is rated B+. The robot's screen flickered. But I cannot violate the core principle of logic, honesty. You can, of course, find excuses to preserve face, but I must adhere to principles. Bai Luan was fuming. Who said I was making excuses? Sir, I have the previous recording here. You previously claimed you were here to collect goods. Must you be so ruthless? Bai Luan actually saw a hint of helplessness on the mechanical face. Playback recording cleared, sir. Have a pleasant morning exercise. Bai Luan looked at the robot, silent for a moment, then spoke with a serious expression. I'll still jog here tomorrow. Why? I said so. Bai Luan was resolute. I am self-disciplined. The distribution robot watched Bai Luan's retreating figure and muttered. Why are humans' mouths harder than mine, a robot's? The distribution robot then dismissed the matter, not even logging it in its system. Its logic unit told it that Bai Luan was just being stubborn for a moment, and the likelihood of him following through was low. Bai Luan felt a little dejected after his wasted journey, but when he arrived at the botanical garden and saw the packages of brand new deliveries, his mood brightened again. Time to unbox. Before entering the botanical garden, Bai Luan disinfected himself, then opened each delivery box, removing various magical little tools he would need later. After opening them all, he checked them again to ensure everything was correct. Then he began his duties as a gardener, tending to these plants. Bai Luan's small figure weaved through the botanical garden, fertilizing the giant potatoes, carefully applying medicine to the depressed black rose, removing diseased teeth from the flowers with teeth growing in their centers. The enormous black rose bent down and opened itself to Bai Luan. Bai Luan carefully plucked off a diseased leaf, then applied medicine to the black rose. Good with the medicine, you'll recover soon. The black rose, which had been open, closed its petals, and the bud rubbed against Bai Luan, expressing gratitude. Bai Luan stroked the black rose. Once you recover, you'll be just like your companions. These words made the dejected rose very happy. The naturally dark color of the flower began to display a blue hue at the edges after these words. I remember, blue roses represent friendship. Bai Luan nodded in satisfaction and walked out of the rose garden. Life should be healthy and well. Bai Luan crouched down and greeted Inspiration Shroom, yesterday's MVP translator. Good morning, Inspiration Shroom. Good morning, Shroom. Can you repeat that thing from yesterday? Inspiration, Gilly Gilly Watcha Inspiration Shroom. Today's Inspiration Shroom, get. This is ice, a must-taste daily. What strange sound should I teach Inspiration Shroom to make today? Anyway, Inspiration Shroom's voice sounds like an ethereal young girl, so no matter how strange the sound, it will still sound good when hummed. Then I'll teach this today. Inspiration Shroom, repeat after me, goo goo gaga. Shroom shroom gaga shroom. Can you remove the last shroom? I'll try shroom cough cough. Inspiration Shroom coughed twice, then shouted. Shroom shroom gaga. Then its entire mushroom body trembled, seemingly struggling with its underlying code. Shroom. Inspiration Shroom still lost, unable to hold it in. Encountering super strong underlying code, as formidable as a monster, it tried its best but couldn't win. Can't do it, Shroom. All right, I know you tried. Oh, I almost forgot. Bai Luan pulled Chizuru out of his pocket. Chizuru shook its head, curiously observing the new environment, then flapped its wings and flew up. What is that, Shroom? It's a creation just like you all. A scientific creation, Shroom. I didn't realize you were a scientist, Shroom. I don't know if it's scientific, but it is indeed my creation. Inspiration Shroom pondered Bai Luan's words for a moment, then realized it couldn't understand. Never mind, Shroom. I'm just a mushroom. Some things don't need to be understood so clearly, Shroom. Bai Luan looked at Chizuru and said, You'll live here from now on. Then Bai Luan murmured to himself, Do I need to prepare food for it? If Chizuru eats relatively normal food, then this botanical garden can basically meet its survival needs. But Chizuru isn't a normal creature. It might not be able to eat what normal creatures can. It will take care of itself. It's my creation, after all, I can't just abandon it. Freedom is the best gift you can give it, just like me and you, just come and visit it often. All right, you've convinced me. Compared to the system forcing him to complete a bunch of tasks, this free-range approach was more comfortable. Bai Luan glanced at the happily flying Chizuru. Since the system says it's fine, then it should be fine. Oh right, there's one more thing I need to remind it about. If you see a beautiful Gothic-style brown-haired girl puppet wearing a beret with purple lilies, a collar around her neck, and a purple-gray dress adorned with lace, remember to pretend to be an ordinary paper crane. As soon as Bai Luan finished speaking, Chizuru suddenly froze in midair and fell. Huh? Bai Luan quickly reached out and caught the falling Chizuru, staring at the paper crane in his hand with a puzzled expression. What's wrong with you? Were you just talking about me? A familiar voice came from behind him. Bai Luan turned around somewhat stiffly and indeed saw the Herta puppet. The Herta puppet had appeared behind Bai Luan at some point, She was expressionless, one slender arm elegantly propped on her hip. Her deep purple eyes, which seemed to contain the mysteries of the galaxy's operation, were calmly fixed on him. "What's wrong with seeing me?" Despite her usual expression, Bai Luan felt a sense of pressure. Damn it, he'd been caught. Chapter 17, Take It Apart and See. How should I explain this situation? Yesterday, I asked Ms. Herta in the little black room. She said I wouldn't be dissected. But that was on the premise I didn't cause trouble. Now, the situation is basically a direct confrontation. I don't want to be studied by Ms. Herta. Although Bai Luan was somewhat flustered inside, he remained calm on the surface. Well, I just saw this little thing flying around. Did you make it? Ms. Herta's words gave Bai Luan inspiration. It made him think of a way to muddle through. Didn't I see Ms. Herta's magic carpet a while ago? I learned a few tricks from it, so I made this little guy. But unfortunately, my craftsmanship isn't great yet. This little guy can only fly for a short time. It can't stay suspended, which is why it fell just now. Oh, really? The Herta puppet raised an eyebrow with interest. She looked at the paper crane lying in Bai Luan's hand. Show me. All right. Bai Luan turned around and looked at the paper crane. I hope Chizuru cooperates with me. Bai Luan tossed the paper crane into the air. Chizuru flew up successfully. But instead of flapping its wings like before, it seemed suspended. Its wings didn't move at all now. Well done. Bai Luan was so excited, he wanted to punch the air. Chizuru cooperated perfectly with him. It even came up with a way to make his previous words more believable. Not flapping its wings directly reduced its biological feel significantly. Now Chizuru looked more like a technological creation instead. After hovering for a while, Chizuru suddenly became unstable. It floated up and down twice, then fell. Bai Luan reached out and caught the falling Chizuru. Originally, the system said Chizuru could take care of itself. Bai Luan was a bit skeptical about that. But now seeing Chizuru's perfect cooperation, Bai Luan believed it completely. Such good cooperation indeed. Chizuru's brilliant performance made Bai Luan breathe a sigh of relief. He turned around, facing the Herta puppet again. He just caught a glimpse of blue data streams flashing. They were flashing in the Herta puppet's eyes. Is the puppet recording something? Forget it, I'll just go with the flow now. There's nothing else I can do at this point. As you can see, Ms. Herta, this creation isn't perfect yet. It has obvious flaws. One day, just by looking at it and you made it. No. Bai Luan smiled and shook his head slightly. I'm not that much of a genius, honestly. After you left, I went back to study it extensively. Of course, I didn't damage the carpet at all. Being able to understand this genius's invention proves your good talent. Not at all, haha. Bai Luan forced a smile awkwardly. You can't hide for long. Ms. Herta's words from the little black room last night resurfaced. He had only just decided yesterday to contend with Ms. Herta. And today, he almost exposed himself completely. Should he say it's Ms. Herta, as expected? It seems you're adapting to the work quite quickly. Ms. Herta's words immediately activated Bai Luan's work radar. There's a saying, as long as you're excellent, you'll have endless work. Ms. Herta, I think I still need time to adapt. Don't worry, deliberately making things difficult for subordinates is for incompetence. This genius doesn't have the time for that. I only came this time to confirm something. To confirm you won't mess everything up here. That's good. Even more terrifying than a pile of work is something else. Having a boss who does nothing but talks too much. Especially while you're trying to do a pile of work. However, if Ms. Herta were to actually step in and help out, Bai Luan would have to worry about keeping his job. The Herta puppet walked around the botanical garden. She was checking on Bai Luan's work situation carefully. It seems there are no problems at all. Then I'll leave this place to you. I'll come back to check again in a few months. No problem. As I said before, do this gardener's job well. Then you'll be qualified to stay here. So I won't introduce you to other tasks for now. Of course, if you really want to learn more. Just stop one of me, enemy is qualified to teach you. Bai Luan nodded. Understood. I'm leaving. The Herta puppet waved her hand casually as a farewell. She left swiftly after that. After the Herta puppet left, Bai Luan breathed a sigh of relief. He finally managed to muddle through successfully. After the Herta puppet left completely, Chizuru moved. Chizuru had been lying still pretending to be a machine. It moved a few times and returned to its lively state. Its biological state was back. Well done, little guy. Chizuru tilted its head, seemingly very happy. Bai Luan settled Chizuru down a bit first. Then he used the inspiration shroom and plants to warn them. To warn them about Chizuru's presence specifically. This was to prevent Chizuru from being hunted by some plants. Some plants might hunt it as live prey. After all this was done, the gardener's work was finished. According to Ms. Herta's arrangement, after completing this job, it was free time. So Bai Luan light-footedly ran home quickly. He transported all the valuable metal plates to the nearest laboratory. Then he began to build his flying backpack. The flying backpack Bai Luan wanted to build was simple. Just create a bunch of nanorobots that would normally be hidden in clothing and assemble into a flying backpack when needed. He chose nanorobots because once the design blueprint was done, the rest could just be copied exactly. Moreover, by inputting blueprints of other mechanical structures into them, these nanorobots could be transformed into other mechanical creations, which was extremely cost-effective overall. Although manufacturing such nanorobots required extremely high-precision instruments, Ms. Herta's place had laboratories that were among the best. Among the best in the entire universe, actually. So there was no need to worry about hardware. As for the design blueprint for these nanorobots, he had already pestered and painstakingly grinded it out. Grinded it out in the little black room. Now he just needed to replicate it in reality. Bai Luan moved back and forth between the various facilities. In the laboratory constantly. He was constantly inputting one parameter after another, occasionally stopping in front of one to observe the production status carefully. Soon this laboratory, which had not been used by anyone for a long time, it began to operate again smoothly. Bai Luan, after confirming that everything was on track, he waited quietly to the side patiently. Although this was his first actual use of this laboratory, he showed no signs of awkwardness at all. Every movement exuded the effortless ease of extreme familiarity. There was no other way about it. He had used this laboratory too many times already. Too many times in the little black room. Bai Luan could complete these steps with his eyes closed. He had experienced various unexpected situations countless times before. Having been tempered by 1,000 trials, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of any unexpected situations now. After getting all projects underway successfully, Bai Luan had nothing to do. No matter how skilled he was, building things required waiting. In his leisure time, Bai Luan looked at the scanner. Just one scan could reveal the internal structure of an item. Suddenly, he had an urge to scan something. To scan something and see its internal structure. Human curiosity is unstoppable indeed. It's like when you're scrolling through short videos. When you encounter those famous speed bumps. Buying abandoned warehouses for blind boxes, forging sword competitions. Hydraulic presses crushing various items, what something looks like under magnification. Under a microscope at high magnification. If I'm going to scan, what should I scan? Oh, right. Bai Luan pulled a pocket watch from his person. He had found it among the pile of miscellaneous items. Among the miscellaneous items Ms. Herta had given him. How about I look at the inside of this pocket watch? They say pocket watches are very intricate things. Soon, the scanner and assembly machine were assembled by Bai Luan. Bai Luan placed the pocket watch under the scanner carefully. Then he activated the scanner. The scanner emitted blue light immediately. It was scanning the pocket watch from various directions. Then a projector on the other side projected a blueprint. A blueprint of the pocket watch appeared. Bai Luan looked at the blueprint projection carefully. He manipulated it to flip left and right, just like the real thing would. Let me see your internal structure. Bai Luan waved his hand. With Bai Luan's wave, the blueprint projection immediately disassembled. It disassembled, turning into piece after piece of parts. Soon, the projections of the scattered parts almost filled everything. They almost filled the entire laboratory space. Looking at those individual parts, Bai Luan was dumbfounded. There must be at least 1,000 parts, right? Sure enough, nothing from Ms. Herta's place was simple. Bai Luan waved his hand again, turning off the projection. Looking at the pocket watch, lying under the scanner still. An even bolder idea popped into Bai Luan's head. How about I take it apart and look? Chapter 18, Smash Varudo. Good news here. I took apart this pocket watch completely. It had a total of 1549 parts. Bad news though. I can't put it back together now. Bai Luan stared expressionlessly at the miniature mountain range. It was constructed from tiny gears, springs, bearings, and screws. The height of these stacked parts already far exceeded the original height. Far exceeded the original height of the pocket watch. At first, he arranged the parts neatly. But then he gave up on that. Because the desktop wasn't big enough to hold all the parts. He originally thought he could disassemble and assemble it freely. Freely with the blueprint, but now it seems he underestimated it. He underestimated this pocket watch completely. He didn't know which part was installed incorrectly. It was occupying the position of another part entirely. He didn't notice it at the time. He just continued assembling regardless. Now, when trying to install the part whose position was taken, he realized the position was wrong. At this moment, Bai Luan was more despairing than a pilot. A pilot unable to take off. As the saying goes, one wrong step leads to many mistakes. Now Bai Luan had to disassemble all the way back. All the way back to correct the mistake. But this would undoubtedly take a lot of time. I don't want to spend the night in the lab. Forget it, since it's already like this. I have no desire to argue over right or wrong. Little black room, activate. After Bai Luan entered the little black room, the familiar voice came. The familiar voice of Herta came soon. The lab, it seems the flying backpack is finally on the agenda. The flying backpack you've been tinkering with for a long time. Herta walked closer and saw the parts scattered everywhere. Scattered on the table. What did you take apart? A pocket watch you threw into the junk pile. A pocket watch. Herta casually picked up the projected dial. She was fiddling with it with her fingertips. Her eyes like she was flipping through a long-forgotten diary. An unimportant diary. I can't remember. She was unenthusiastic about it. With a flick of her wrist, the image scattered. The image of the dial scattered and disappeared. Like discarded waste paper. Probably a souvenir from some boring banquet. Forced upon me by some family. Very valuable. It was thrown into the junk pile by this genius. How valuable could it be? Herta leaned carelessly against the workbench. However, generally speaking, it's quite valuable. Did I just casually take apart something worth millions? It should be. Herta tilted her head, thought for a moment. Then she uttered words with a matter-of-fact cruelty. It's not that cheap, actually. I'm just saying, can you please stop throwing away such things? Such priceless things casually in the future. What if someone like me picks it up? Someone who doesn't know its value and takes it apart. Oh my, you're quite self-aware, aren't you? Haha. Bai Luan laughed twice, finding joy in his misery. Then he began to disassemble and reassemble a portion. A portion of the pocket watch. While carefully disassembling the parts on the pocket watch, he spoke. He casually said something. By the way, I almost got caught by you today. Caught doing what? The fact that I created a life. Tell me the details, I'll enjoy it. I took Chizuru to the botanical garden. And as I was releasing it, I turned around. You were behind me, watching me release it. Since you didn't go into the little black room. That means you managed to fool your way through, right? As expected of Miss Herta, you guessed it right away. How did you fool your way through? That was all thanks to Chizuru. I named that life Chizuru. Such a casual name. Although the name is casual, Chizuru is very smart. At that time, perhaps it was because someone was accompanying him. Assembling the complex pocket watch was no longer tedious, even if a part flew off or was installed incorrectly. Bai Luan just smiled, retrieved the part. Then he calmly continued assembling. After an unknown amount of time, Bai Luan placed the dial part. He completed the assembly of the entire pocket watch. Looking at the complete pocket watch, Bai Luan raised his hands. He cheered loudly. I finally finished assembling it. Then Bai Luan turned his head and saw Herta. She was propping her chin with her hand. She was watching him intently. Bai Luan scratched his head a little awkwardly. At first, he was chatting with Herta while assembling. But towards the end, he became completely engrossed. Completely engrossed in assembling the pocket watch. The guilt of leaving his friend aside naturally arose. Sorry, I left you hanging earlier. You didn't notice. Bai Luan was startled and asked. Notice what? The fact that you missed one part. Herta, with a gloating smile, pointed to a tiny part. A tiny part that had fallen into a dark corner. At some unknown time. Bai Luan extended his finger, pointed at the part. He picked it up, looked at the part carefully. The part that was about the size of a grain of rice. Then he looked at the already assembled pocket watch. He had to take it apart again. Check it step by step, and then put it back together. Instantly, his face was covered with a mask of pain. Then a roar erupted from his throat. Mixed with annoyance, regret, anger, and pain. Oh no, old mano, I got my lines mixed up. Never mind, oh no. Bai Luan's fluid changes in expression successfully amused Herta. His self-deprecating remarks amused her. All right, there's no need to be so sad. Herta waved her hand, beckoning the projector's projection over. Then with a casual flick of her finger, she disassembled it. She disassembled the projected pocket watch step by step, until it reached the part Bai Luan hadn't installed. This part's position. Herta's fingertip lightly tapped the tiny speck of light. The tiny speck of light in the projection. Her voice was calm and unruffled. Did you remember it? She waved her hand again. The entire disassembled pocket watch projection was pushed by an invisible hand. It was floating steadily in front of Bai Luan. Bai Luan watched intently, making sure to engrave it. To engrave the projection in his mind. Then he nodded and said something. I've noted it down. That's good. Don't make the same mistake outside that you made in here. Herta turned off the projection completely. My guidance will become increasingly difficult to obtain. As the number of times increases. Understood, I will cherish every piece of guidance. Then his figure disappeared from the little black room. Back in reality, Bai Luan looked at the scattered parts. The scattered parts on the table. His mind was no longer blank. Before, he could only rely on the projected blueprint. Rely on the projected blueprint for guidance. But now, he had the steps in his mind. The steps to assemble this pocket watch in his mind. Bai Luan's mouth curved into an arc. He picked up tweezers, clamped a tiny part. He said in a relaxed and cheerful tone. Super assembly. With the assembly experience from the little black room, efficiency soared. Bai Luan's assembly efficiency soared. Aha, who was secretly watching, couldn't help but ponder. Why does this guy have sudden enlightenment so often? Is he really a genius? Soon, the pocket watch in Bai Luan's hand reached the step. The step he had previously missed. He found the small part from that dark corner. If Herta hadn't reminded him, he probably wouldn't have noticed. He probably wouldn't have noticed this, right? Or, even if he did, it would have taken trouble. It would have taken him a lot of trouble to find this part. Praise Madame Herta. The last few steps were fluid and effortless. When the last screw was tightened securely, the tightly fitting dial cover closed properly. Tick, tick, tick. The clear, steady, rhythmic sound of the hands moving. Like a newborn heartbeat. Perfect. Bai Luan picked up the pocket watch carefully. Looking at it from left to right. completely satisfied no matter how he looked at it. Strange item, reassembled pocket watch. Pauses time for 7 seconds. I know what you're thinking. ZAWRUDO. Can such a concept-level strange item really be obtained so casually? A pocket watch with over 1,000 parts can be considered high-grade. Does reassembling it count as me creating it? Why not? Never mind, for him, this was a good thing. He gently pressed the exquisite button on the side. The button on the side of the pocket watch with his thumb. The pocket watch in his hand burst into a bright light. The intricate markings on the dial rotated and reassembled. Like living things. Finally settling into 7 evenly distributed symbols. Faintly glowing, strange symbols. The hands on the dial began to move. They began to move along these 7 new markings. In the laboratory, the hum of all instruments ceased. The sound of liquid flowing through pipes stopped. Even the trajectory of dust dancing in the air froze. All the rhythms belonging to time instantly froze and disappeared. Absolute silence, as if the entire universe had been paused. Paused and plunged into the deepest death. Bai Luan curiously observed the world of time stop. To summarize it in 2 words, it was dead silence. He casually picked up the tweezers from the workbench. He gently tossed them upwards. The moment the tweezers left his hand, something happened. They were like a fly pinned in amber, suspended motionless in midair. Maintaining the posture of the moment, they were released. So this is what time stop feels like. It's as if the entire world dies within these 7 seconds. And only I am alive. When the 7th marking was quietly crossed by the hand. Buzz! The suspended tweezers seemed to be released from an invisible restraint. They were obeying the call of gravity, leaping up a small distance again. Then they began to fall. Bai Luan's eyes were quick. With a flick of his wrist, he steadily caught them. He caught them back in his palm. The world came alive again. The hum of instruments, the flow of liquid, the dance of dust. All the noises of time poured back into his ears. Usable once every 24 hours. Once a day. He really did get a gold-tier item from a single draw. A single casual draw. He never expected to get such a strange item. Just by assembling a pocket watch. It seems he has another trump card in this world. Bai Luan carefully put the pocket watch away close to his body. Then he took out his phone to check the time. It's already night. It was morning before I entered this lab. It's true that doing scientific research makes one forget. Forget to eat and sleep. Chapter 19, What should I do with this? After I woke each morning, I would go for a run, then clock in at the supply distribution station. I worked as a gardener in the botanical garden, caring for exotic plants and teaching the inspiration shroom's unusual sounds. These included mambo, inspiration shroom, cuckoo gaga, and sleeping banana monkeys, among others. Later, I headed to the lab to craft various wonderful gadgets and see what odd items the oddity forger provided. When I felt hungry, I went to the kitchen to prepare my 3 daily meals. Occasionally, a Herta puppet would show up, bringing Bai Luan along to explore new ventures. Just like that, 3 years passed by in a flash. During these 3 years, I greatly improved my cooking abilities, sharpening them in a well-stocked kitchen. I thoroughly enjoyed 3 years of complimentary meals at Herta's place. It was wonderful. Over those 3 years, Bai Luan successfully regained his original height and gathered a large collection of peculiar oddities. Most were useless, for instance, a pixel-style pair of sunglasses Bai Luan crafted when bored. Its oddity effect automatically adjusted to the wearer's prescription, allowing even nearsighted individuals to wear sunglasses. There was also a long umbrella. Its oddity effect made it function as a parachute. Is it useful? A little bit. Is it very useful? Not really. Those 3 years allowed Bai Luan to understand all the facilities at Herta's place generally. Now, his work options here weren't limited to just gardening. No matter what kind of job it was, Bai Luan could handle it once he attempted it. After learning all the jobs, Bai Luan rarely encountered the Herta puppet anymore. As for Herta herself, He had only met her once when he first arrived, and hadn't seen her since. Bai Luan sensed that Herta must have forgotten about him. This was normal, after all. Herta would immediately pursue anything that sparked her interest and discard it when bored. He must belong to the category of things that lost her interest and were tossed aside. Bai Luan was very pleased about this and quite content with the current situation. Given his current usefulness, there was no need to worry about being dismissed. Herta had now lost interest in him, meaning he didn't have to worry about his lies being discovered. 3 years had granted him the ability to protect himself in this world. The reason Bai Luan hadn't departed yet was that this place was superior to anywhere else. The environment was beautiful, the facilities were complete, and it had everything he needed. But it still wasn't as good as the Astral Express. Recently, Bai Luan started saving credit points, planning to purchase a spaceship. This way, whenever the Astral Express departed again, he could immediately fly after it and board. If only there was a ticket that could transport him directly to the Astral Express. Unfortunately, the train roamed the universe along the silver rails, and nobody knew where its next stop would be. The train was probably still resting at Heimko's old home. Bai Luan had already investigated in the simplest way, opening the search engine on his phone. He typed Astral Express relaunch into the search bar and clicked search. Going through the search results, most of them were useless information. The mystery of Achilles fall you don't know. Daily expanding knowledge, the legacy of the Trailblaze Path, Astral Express. Ghost story, the Phantom Train urban legend. Does anyone still remember the legendary Astral Express? Is it really completely over? As for any news about the Astral Express restarting, there wasn't a single piece of information. He had indeed arrived a bit too early. But this was also good news. At least he had sufficient time to save credit points. Staying here to work for Herta didn't pay a salary. Of course, Bai Luan also knew that if others learned he said this, many people would criticize him harshly. Because many people considered working for Ms. Herta their life's goal. Bai Luan's extremely boastful statement would definitely draw criticism. Not to mention the priceless miscellaneous items Ms. Herta casually gave him at the beginning. Born in Rome, but his life's goal is to leave Rome and see the world. That's a very irritatingly boastful statement. But Bai Luan's original intention was genuinely not to boast. The miscellaneous items Ms. Herta gave were indeed priceless, but he had no suitable channels to sell them. Firstly, buyers were hard to find. When he finally found someone brave enough to buy, they looked at the address and exclaimed, "My goodness, it's Ms. Herta's house. It must be a prank by some idle little CS." Thinking this, they blocked Bai Luan. Bai Luan had a mountain of gold in his hands, but the mountain couldn't be converted into credit points. So Bai Luan had no choice but to earn credit points in a different way. Using the facilities at Herta's, where he could find anything needed, he managed to replicate instrumentals from his previous life. He sang the ones he could himself, and for those he couldn't, he used an AI voice. Brother, he practiced tuning intensely in the little black room, and the finished products were truly as good as real. What nunchucks, blue and white porcelain, the only one, the brightest star in the night sky. He finally got to Honkai Star Rail, so why not let friends in this world enjoy some fine dining? You won't even get a mouthful of coarse grain. Just listen to these songs, you'll be speechless. After the songs became popular, Bai Luan used his popular account to take on some advertisements, thereby earning credit points. He also reskinned some small games from his previous life and released them online to earn credit points. For example, using the swarm disaster as a background to create Plants vs. Zombies. Or using Aha as the protagonist to make Jump King. He also opened an account on a short video platform, filming the magical plants and his daily cooking. These 3 accounts all showed promise, bringing Bai Luan a considerable income. But it was still far from enough to purchase a spaceship. Interestingly, the short video account was questioned by people who thought he used AI for the visuals. Potatoes as big as houses, pumpkins that changed expressions, roses that changed colors. They looked nothing like things that would exist in reality. Then Bai Luan simply set up a camera and live-streamed the botanical garden for 7 consecutive days without break. He successfully crushed the skeptics, who deleted their accounts and ran away. Thanks to that little hater's fuss, Bai Luan received many donations during those 7 days. What a benefactor! Watching the credit points in his account continuously increase, Bai Luan's face was plastered with an uncultured smile. Indeed, when you don't have to worry about food and drink, things are easier to succeed. Suddenly, a message arrived on his phone. Herta sent a location. Herta sent, come here quickly. The Herta puppet hadn't contacted him in a long time. This time, contacting him with such an urgent tone, there must be something important she needed him for. Bai Luan didn't delay, putting away his phone. Then his tuxedo suddenly rippled. The nanobots attached to his clothing, relying on mimicry technology, surged and gathered behind Bai Luan. Before long, a flight unit was assembled on Bai Luan. With a thought from Bai Luan, the wings of the flight backpack behind him spread. At the same time, 4 thrusters spewed blue flames, sending Bai Luan into the sky, then he zoomed away. Rapidly weaving through various buildings, avoiding all obstacles, Bai Luan reached Herta's designated location at maximum speed. Then he landed in an Iron Man-like pose. After landing, Bai Luan stood up, and the flight backpack behind him quickly disassembled into nanobots, reattaching to his clothes. Bai Luan scanned the area and quickly found the Herta puppet. "Ms. Herta, I'm he." Bai Luan's greeting was cut short as he froze. Because he saw a prominent figure he hadn't seen in years standing beside the Herta puppet, Herta herself. "Ms. Herta, you're here too. Did you make that yourself?" Haha. Bai Luan gave an embarrassed, awkward laugh. Just a little gadget, made it for fun. Showing off technological creations in front of Ms. Herta was like teaching a fish to swim. To quickly dispel the awkward atmosphere, Bai Luan took the initiative to ask, "What did Ms. Herta need me for?" "I collected too many trinkets and had nowhere to put them, so I planned to just build something to store them." As this genius was constantly refining this plan, I suddenly realized, this is the Herta Space Station you mentioned. Congratulations, you've used 3 years to prove that your ability to see fate is not fabricated. For a moment, Bai Luan didn't know whether to be happy or sad. The good news was that his identity as a prophet of destiny hadn't been exposed. The bad news was that this identity had successfully reignited Herta's previously faded interest in him. Bai Luan felt a bit helpless. Herta was almost forgetting about him. She probably thought of building a space station this time, and then suddenly recalled a dusty memory. Didn't someone tell her 3 years ago that there would be a space station? His name was Bai Luan, wasn't it? And so, she came here to find him. Since what you said is true, tell me now. How much do you know about that space station? What does it look like? How is it designed? What's its internal structure? Can you draw its blueprint? Herta fired a barrage of questions. Bai Luan wanted to cry, but had no tears. MiHoYo's description of the Herta Space Station in his previous life was, at best, game text plus a model. Where was Bai Luan supposed to get a proper, legitimate plan for building a space station for Herta? The stone he picked up 3 years ago had finally landed on his own foot 3 years later. He was just a game player. How could he possibly know the structural blueprint of the Herta Space Station? And no one told me that playing a game required knowing aerospace design. What am I supposed to do? Chapter 20, I'm not a genius at all. Although the situation was tricky, this wasn't the first time Bai Luan had tricked Herta. Just a mere 80-something geniuses since Noose ascended to godhood. Watch me trick you again. Ms. Herta. Bai Luan's tone was unhurried. 3 years ago, I told you that even if one can see fate, one shouldn't interfere with it too much. Are you trying to fool this genius with that butterfly effect rhetoric? No, Ms. Herta, my reluctance to speak is not to fob you off, but to avoid interfering with you excessively. Bai Luan spread his hands and said, "It is you who wants to build the space station, not because I foresaw that you would build it. Therefore you should build a space station, isn't that right? The important thing is Herta, not the prophecy. If I spoke too much, wouldn't I, to some extent, distort your original thoughts?" Herta pondered for a moment, then crossed her arms and retorted. Then in the fate you observed originally, you didn't speak, and I still built the space station. What difference would it make if you told me or not? A miss by a hair is a miss by a mile. Ms. Herta, the impact of prophecy is negligible in the short term, but incredibly significant in the long term. The current you wants to do something because the current you wants to do something. But if you rely too much on prophecy, the motivation for you to do something will become different. The future me did this, she must have her reasons. Bai Luan looked directly into Herta's eyes and said neither subserviently nor arrogantly. Doesn't Ms. Herta think that such a self would be more like a puppet of fate than Ms. Herta herself? Herta remained silent, their gazes intertwining for a long time, until Herta finally revealed a smile and spoke first. You've grown quite a bit taller than you were at the beginning. Is that the point? Bai Luan smiled helplessly. Ms. Herta, on the other hand, hasn't changed at all. She's still as vibrant, young, and beautiful as a maiden. In simple terms, if you tell me too much, it will cause me to become a puppet of fate. So you don't want to say too much. Bai Luan nodded, indicating agreement. I see. She seemed to be listening. Phew. Bai Luan breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed he had managed to fool her again this time. But Herta's next sentence made Bai Luan's heart race again. Then you should also participate in the construction of Herta Space Station. That way, you won't have to tell me anything about Herta Space Station, and you can still help me. Bai Luan was stunned. He opened his mouth but couldn't find a reason to refute. Is this how a genius solves problems? But Ms. Herta, for such a big project, is it really okay for a half-baked person like me? Bai Luan began his final struggle. Aren't you very smart? I've seen the puppets report on you. It says that no matter what task is given to you, you can master it quickly. In as little as 1 day, or as long as 7 days. The space station is indeed a bit more difficult than those, so I'll give you a month. This. Can't you do it? Who are you looking down on? I'll build it for you to see. No problem at all. That's good, take out your phone. Herta has requested to add you as a friend. You have added Herta as a friend. If there's any progress, contact me directly. Herta left satisfied. The heavy burden of building Herta Space Station was suddenly placed on him. Just thinking about it made his head ache. He had been so confident when he agreed, but now that it was time to execute, he felt listless. He was still saving money to buy a spaceship. After this ordeal, he might even be able to build a spaceship himself, right? Forget it. Bai Luan patted his cheeks, cheering himself up. It had come to this, complaining and regretting were useless. It's just a space station. Watch me grind it out for you. Little Black Room. Activate. For the next month, Bai Luan lived in hell mode, fully immersing himself in the design of the space station. First, he begged the system to find the map of Herta Space Station from his previous life's game. Then he used the in-game modeling as a reference for design. Once he started, he realized that MiHoYo's map from his previous life was a super simplified map, only providing a reference. At the same time, he lacked a large amount of professional knowledge. Rocket dynamics and carrier power, modular design, closed-loop ecological systems, material engineering. Fortunately, there was a Herta in the little black room to be his teacher. It was as if he had to make up for the lack of study intensity from his leisurely 3 years. The study intensity during this period once made Bai Luan completely collapse. It made him have to go to the botanical garden to relax. For a long time, Bai Luan even developed a fear of the little black room. Going in felt like being in prison, but if he didn't study, the 1-month deadline was getting closer. Human potential is limitless when pushed by a deadline. After a month of life-or-death struggle, Bai Luan painstakingly created the design blueprint for Herta Space Station. When he completed this design blueprint, Bai Luan was so moved he cried tears of old age, wailing in the little black room. Who understands, my people, who understands? Although only a month had passed outside, inside this little black room, I was almost worked to death. Darn space aerospace. If I ever do this again, I'll be crazy. I'm exhausted. It's decided. As soon as the news of the Astral Express resuming its journey comes out, I'll immediately go join them. If I keep working like this, I'll die of exhaustion sooner or later. Bai Luan sent the design blueprint to Herta, then collapsed onto his bed and fell into a deep sleep. This was a fatigue that originated from the soul, something that physical rest simply couldn't recover. When Bai Luan opened his eyes again, it was already the afternoon of the next day. Bai Luan groggily opened his eyes, checked his phone, and it vibrated several times with a few messages. Bai Luan's heart sank a few times, and an ominous feeling immediately arose. He opened his phone and, as expected, it was a message from Herta. Herta has received your file. Herta sent, you made this in a month. Herta sent, you leisurely strolled in the botanical garden for a month and casually made this. Herta sent, why aren't you replying? Herta sent, you wait. Phone. Herta sent, reply when you wake up. The photo Herta sent was of him sound asleep in bed. Oh my God, Herta was here. Bai Luan immediately sobered up and sat up in bed. Looking at the string of messages, he scratched his head, then finally gritted his teeth. Bai Luan sent, I pulled an all-nighter, overworked and overslept. Herta sent, I truly underestimated you. To complete a design blueprint of this caliber in such a short time, it seems a month was still too long. Bai Luan sent, Ms. Herta, are you serious? I almost studied myself to death this month. And you still think I had too much time? Is that a human thing to say? Herta sent, I originally thought I'd give you a month to get familiar with the new field. Herta sent, I didn't expect you to directly produce a finished product, and a quite mature one at that. Like something that had been built for a long time. Herta sent, I retrieved your activity monitoring records. Herta sent, the records show that for over 80% of your observable time this month, you appeared elsewhere. In the botanical garden, the kitchen, or other non-work areas. Herta sent, you were either chatting with mushrooms, researching new recipes, or simply spacing out. Herta sent, slacking off dominated your time. Herta sent, and yet, you completed the design using only a little bit of fragmented time. Herta sent, and you say you weren't slacking off. Bai Luan sent. It was only when Herta said this that Bai Luan realized something. For most of his time in reality this month, he had indeed been complaining to inspiration shrooms in the botanical garden, staring blankly at the refrigerator in the kitchen, or finding a corner to clear his mind. All to alleviate the mental trauma caused by the high-intensity study in the little black room. In the eyes of any uninformed bystander, this was 100% blatant and unrestrained slacking off. The most terrifying thing was, he couldn't explain it at all. Was he supposed to take Herta's hand and say something? Dear Ms. Herta, actually I have a little black room given by the system. And I was studying like crazy in there. The time I appeared to be spacing out outside was actually me undergoing mental recuperation. Who would believe that? What's more, Herta now completely believed that his origin was from AHA, not from the system. Oh no, in that case, wouldn't he become an extremely efficient genius in Herta's eyes? Which meant that if there were similar tasks in the future, Herta wouldn't think of anyone else, but only him. Bai Luan seemed to see his leisurely daily life waving goodbye as it drifted away. No. Come back. I need you. A hint of despair gradually appeared on Bai Luan's face. Ms. Herta, is it still too late to confess to you now? Actually, I'm not a genius at all. This story tells us that lying harms both oneself and others. Bai Luan glanced speechlessly at the system's dialogue box. Indeed, the joys and sorrows of humans, oh no, the joys and sorrows of humans and systems are not the same.